Hi, my name is Jack Dangermond, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the 2021 Geodesign Summit. I know many of you are from all around the world, and you have many different disciplines, you have many different backgrounds. This is really an amazing year for us to hold this summit. You know, geodesign is increasingly becoming important in our world. Today, we are facing major transformations in almost all of our organizations. Our cities are transforming through new work from home kinds of activities. There's consequence happening with digital technology everywhere. And in one area, it's how we design and create our future. That's what this particular meeting is going to be all about. So I want to welcome all of you and let you know that we have a very packed program with lots of sharing from many different individuals who've been working in this subject for some time. The purpose of my talk will be to give you some context, some examples of what people are actually doing, and then move on into what the technology that underpins GIS is doing, and then a few additional comments. Let's start off with this. GIS and geodesign have never really been more important. I mean, we're all in this together looking at the pandemic of COVID, but that's one of the elements of an interconnected world that we're living in at this very difficult time. We're living in a world of overpopulated populations where we're feeling the impact of climate change. We're seeing the loss of nature, unconstrained development, and so many social and economic impacts are underway. And because geography is so rich as a science to model and understand all of these various patterns, it's an amazing kind of glue that brings us together. All of us know that we must overcome many of these challenges, and that's going to require the science of geography. It's going to require us being able to understand things better. It's also going to be able to require that we use our very best technology and our best science and our best design collaborative work to be able to bring these into a better focus. I want to talk for a moment about what I'm seeing in the application space with all of our users around the world. We now have over 10 million users who are building and applying geographic knowledge in various ways. And these applications cut across many kinds of individuals and different kinds of organizations. They bring together different sorts of sciences. They put forth information that us as designers can use and integrate into our work about creating a better future. These examples show some work going on in environmental monitoring and assessment. And the work ranges from micro scale on the land, in the oceans, all the way to macro scale, tracking the impact of climate change at many levels. Organizations are applying geographic information systems to manage land information, transactionally and in terms of all their attributes, giving us insights into what's going on economically or in land use patterns in our cities and beyond. Planners, like many of you here, and designers are using GIS as a framework to do community design, to do recreation suitability, to do suitability modeling of all types, to be able to interactively design urban settings, add new buildings, updating a urban fabric, and understand the implications or the impacts of different proposals. GIS is being used to model individual buildings and see them in context, allow us to test a particular scenario with a particular building inside of an environmental model. And GIS is moving indoors, kind of managing indoor spaces, being able to visualize them, being able to analyze spatial relationships between them, being able to navigate through these buildings. I mean, it's really an amazing time to be in this field. At a different scale, transportation planning and transportation modeling is empowered by this powerful geographic science, and it's true in roadways, looking at real-time monitoring of what's going on highways, and also being able to regress and look at historical accident analysis. be able to understand what the potential risk is of particular settings. And this isn't just in roads, it's in transit, it's in railroads, it's in vessel movement, all different types of media. At the engineering level and at the public works level, GIS has caught on, and people are employing it to be able to do everything from road inspections, creating increasingly real-time information about assets, to be able to do understanding of where they're spending money and where they're making money in cities, a kind of balancing of the two sides of finance. We're seeing increasingly GIS deployed in the private sector, in retail, in manufacturing, in logistics, in real estate. People are getting the geographic advantage by being able to bring geographic knowledge together to be able to support their decisions about where and what to do where. In the field of disasters and preparing for them, whether it's in fire or whether it's in earthquakes or whether it's in hurricanes or volcanoes, people are deploying GIS and digital twins to be able to replicate what's going on in the field and be able to provide focused decision-making information to help. This has been no greater, this has been an amazing year as we look at COVID and what it's meant to us. But generally, GIS has been a framework or a kind of lens for us to understand information of all type, not just COVID itself, but also social vulnerability, racial and ethnic disparities, looking at infants and disaster prevention centers, looking at food access. I mean, it's just a treasure trove of information for designers and planners of all types. And then there is COVID. I don't know how many trillions of maps have been made in the last year, but certainly billions and billions and billions of them in various geographies around the planet. It's not just seeing what's going on, but it's also understanding how to best address allocating resources, whether it's vaccination centers or testing centers, or understanding capacity of hospitals in respect to increasing spread of this horrendous disease. Well, I would like to say that GIS users around the planet have responded effectively. They've, for example, forecasted where it's moving and also responded effectively in targeting and getting food and emergency distribution of well, all kinds of responses. You can see these examples provide visualization of some of the work going on. Behind this conference is the concept, the theory, the practices of geodesign. And geodesign is resting on top of solid geographic information and often GISs. GIS and geodesign actually represent a process and a framework for bringing geographic information into the design and decision-making frame. It starts with this diagram of measuring things and managing geographic data, and then making maps or visualizing them, and then doing modeling, putting relationships of geography together and making forecasts like we did with COVID, but also forecasts like the hurricanes, or forecasts like landslides, or forecasts like urbanization and land use change. And then setting up a framework for us to do interactive planning and design and evaluation of alternative scenarios in reference to the full set of geographic data, and then make a decision, and then take it to action. And whether it's a utility company or a city, or whether it's a developer of various types, this process, which you came here to get updated on and learn about, is fundamental. It builds on the idea that understanding of data, understanding of processes, understanding of nature, understanding of human activities is a foundation for action. This is what Richard Saul Wurman often refers to when he talks about the theory of information getting out to people and being used. It's really GIS in action. That's the way I sort of describe it, with a unique set of workflows and tools that support it. GIS provides a complete model of reality, both the human or cultural side of geography, but also the environmental or resource side of geography brought together in data models. And this is what's powering so much transformation in organizations. You know, our cities are going to change a lot in the next few years. And digital is going to be, and automation is going to be some of the main influences that cause this revolution to occur. Geographic information, replicating the city in various forms, is creating a kind of digital twin. And planners, designers, architects of all different scales and types need to understand how to interact with these digital twins so that they can not only leverage the information that's coming out of them, 3D, real time, anytime, on any device, but also be able to interact with them in such a way that transactions can occur on the information reality that is being built in various forms. Now, these digital twins are not just unique to cities, although that's where a lot of the action actually is. There's what sometimes is referred to as LIMS, landscape information models, and urban information models, and land use and zoning information models, and BIM information models, or BIMs. Wow, this is a whole spectrum. And GIS cuts across these different types of models and can bring them together, providing a kind of common platform for collaboration. Now, organizations all over the planet, and I know this because I sort of sit on the front lines of watching it, there are really hundreds of thousands of institutions that are building these models or GISs for their own organization's use. They're kind of independent systems and projects that are being done. And they're increasingly, however, sharing their data by way of the web, building, and these different systems are being used by different agencies. A kind of system of systems is beginning to emerge with portals that can reference the metadata about these individual systems and then dynamically bring them together, building what I like to call geospatial infrastructure. So cities are building digital infrastructure for their cities, and they will increasingly be essential, as Michael Batty in UCL in London talk about. Digital as an infrastructure will be part of the living city and an essential part, not just roads and wires and water and social infrastructure. The digital infrastructure will actually not only transform cities, it will also be very important for designers to learn so that they can leverage this information in various ways. So GIS is evolving rapidly to keep up with all of this digital transformation. It's actually enabling the transformation by building something I like to refer to as geospatial infrastructure. And this means interconnecting all the other data sets, being a system of systems, and then being open and available for individual designers or teams to collaborate around, or departments or organizations, or actually whole communities can have access to this digital twin environment that's living and growing as we design it and move it forward. Some of the highlights of that are that this infrastructure can now read in any kind of information. Maps, of course, vector maps, raster maps, imagery, tabular data, unstructured text, real-time IoT data. It all comes alive through dynamic geospatial infrastructure. And this isn't about moving files around. It isn't like I copy the data. Well, you can do that, of course, but it's actually with the miracle of web services, I can dynamically integrate and use in my design or in my applications this information as it's changing in other nodes in the network. So geospatial infrastructure is emerging rapidly, and it's starting to transform cities. Some of them are integrating and leveraging across their entire organization. Others are a little slower. But this platform is also one that brings in lots of different kinds of other technologies. It integrates it. Things like advanced spatial analysis, supporting apps that reach everybody, open access to the data, leveraging cloud and cloud computing, and smart mapping, and a lot of things that you'll be exposed to during this particular session. Let's start with this. GIS maps and dashboards are becoming pervasive. We're developing a kind of spatially literate society. This started with the revolution that Google and others made with consumer-facing maps about where is it, how do I get there? And the world learned. This last year, the world learned about the patterns of geography and that we're all one world through the coronavirus map at Johns Hopkins. This map actually has been viewed over 2 trillion times. Just imagine that. People want to understand what's happening. And it gives me the thought that it's just the beginning. People want to understand climate change. They want to understand biodiversity and their geography, what's happening in their city, what's happening with vaccine distribution, what's happening with racial equity and access to all the services that cities and our designers are creating the future with. These maps tell stories. They help people quickly understand. They understood that the virus started in Wuhan and spread out, and they could see it. They were part of it. And so just think of the power of that context in your work. Apps on top of this infrastructure are making it easy and making, again, applications, not just a map, but applications pervasive, and allowing massive information to be collected in the field and dynamically integrated into the servers that then are used in various ways. Spatial modeling and analytics are advancing. 2D, 3D modeling, 4-dimensional modeling. And this is powerful for designers because they want to see cities, they want to interact with cities, and they want to see it and model it and understand the impacts of their alternative design scenarios. In the GIS field, we are integrating in all kinds of interesting models that are emerging in the open source and open science world. And it's becoming part of living geography and understanding what's going on. In the past, physical models were an essential part of every planner's development. Big cities needed one. And why? Because you could walk around and see the context as well as the content of any proposal or the city as a living system. As this world becomes digital, we are seeing 3D features and 3D meshes through the power of reality capture be able to bring the city together in a similar way. But it's also possible now to make this available so that every citizen can not only see the physical form, but they can also see in real time proposed zonings or a new building that's being suggested to in a particular location. And wow, this is going to be exciting because the new tools for reality capture, in other words, fly a plane and immediately have a 3D city, or transactional work with AI and machine learning to be able to understand patterns and what they mean. This is all coming alive. And planners, geodesigners of various sorts will have access to this and be able to interact with it in their work. I wanted to share just one new area that pretty much excites the heck out of me. It's reality capture. This is a picture. This is a 3D picture, and it's from aerial photography, of course. But as we interact with it, what we can see is there's full scene reality on all the buildings. Somebody flew a plane over this and built this. The power of this is that it's not just a raster picture, but overlaid on top of it are vectors, but they're invisible. So I can interact with these rasters and I can get vector information about all sorts of things. So modern GIS is not simply raster and vector. It's not just pictures and features. It's now also these new reality environments, which I can interact with. They're part of the actual system. Wow, that's so powerful because I can fly and in a couple of hours get a brand new picture of my reality and I can interact with it. So I don't know if you're following everything I'm saying is, it used to be that vectors were one kind of GIS, image processing systems were another kind of GIS, and reality capture was another kind of GIS. Now they've all been brought together so that in a browser with JavaScript APIs, I can see in a browser and play with all the living city. That means making it available to citizens and everyone, everywhere, as the city is dynamically changing. GIS is becoming a dynamic platform. I want you to understand this. It's not just raster pictures, it's also a transactional system, a system of record. So as transactions happen, zoning changes, redevelopment occurs, proposed BIM models or real buildings being built in. These are, the way I look at it, they are transactions on a database, like a tabular database. And wow, that made available through various means that everybody can participate in the city as a living city. And the planning process interacting with that is key. So we can test different alternatives, and we'll see lots of examples of that, and evaluate them and make them available to citizens so they can participate in whole new ways. Well, that's a little bit of the vision I wanted to share of where this is going. And it's not just a vision, it's reality, actually. And underneath that are literally dozens and dozens of technology tools that keep advancing in various ways. Esri has one suite of that called ArcGIS. It's a mammoth system and has various manifestations and devices and in desktops and browsers online in the web that we work on. I'm going to cover first the vision and then go into some of those capabilities that are emerging every year. We're blessed because we have thousands of engineers and product specialists that work on this. The ArcGIS is its name, and it supports the GIS community. It supports the mapping and dynamic location services community, and also location analytics. This has been our work for over 5 decades. It is more recently enlarged to support what we call Geoenabled systems. And these are separate systems. They're not just a GIS. They're a GIS. They're built out of GIS components, but they're focused on specialized workflows. And we'll cover a couple of the efforts that are underway there. For those of you who are interested in software, what we and the technology stack, I'll simply say that Esri as a company supports our work with software products, but also we make it available as SaaS, software as a service, where you don't have to own the computer and it's managed in the cloud. And then it also more recently has been making all of its work available as PaaS, or some of you might be interested in this. That's platform as a service. That's kind of like opening up the hood, providing access through APIs so that developers and large enterprises can embed these tools and make them come alive in various creative ways. So ArcGIS's implementation patterns are probably most commonly the enterprise system with browser access, but also there are 1 million or so desktop users. There's also cloud geospatial infrastructure that's emerging as a pattern, and then this pattern of being able to take the infrastructure and embed it into applications of various types. And I know some of you are building independent, sometimes open source or other applications. What I'm saying is that PaaS services can allow you to have access to the millions and millions of data sets and applications and tools that are available in the Esri cloud environment. We make about, we make hundreds of millions of dollars of investment every year with our engineering team. And they're working on advancing in all of these various areas, looking at implementation patterns from real time to field operations to more content to AI and machine learning. I'll cover them very briefly. Each year, we have a large team who adds to our cloud environment the best available private sector and public sector data and makes it available freely to our users. There are literally millions of data sets and maps that are available here, and billions of maps get made out of them. In the last year, we've added new support for OpenStreetMap dynamically, added new global demographics, and I don't want to go into detail of it. Other people are going to be doing that, but it's kind of a living, singing with about 10 million users adding data and using data for geographic information in many domains. In the tools area, some years ago, we invented a capability to do smart mapping. This was really to replicate what a good cartographer does with respect to color ramps or symbology representations. And this has made some progress in the last year as well. 2D mapping is one way that we communicate geographic data, but these are a few advancing capabilities in the 3D space. from global visualization to information model representation, so that we can visualize and fly through buildings in fast time. And in that 3D space, we've also added smart mapping so that we can represent with the right kind of color ramps and so forth information in various ways. This last year, we've been working on advanced visualization with AR and VR, and also integrating our tools so that you can be in a gaming engine, like the popular gaming engines, and literally build games to fly through massive geographic data. Very interesting to a lot of our users. One form of mapping I want to highlight is something called story maps. There are now there's millions of story maps that have been created and billions of story map views that are made every day. People are telling their story, telling their project, telling their science, telling about going to a place through story maps. It's becoming like a social media. And this year we intend to make this available publicly for consumers to tell their own stories, but also for consumers to be able to pull geographic information and tell their own way of what's going on. Very powerful for designers, because I can tell the story, my design story through a story map. Well, more about that later. We're continue to make advances in spatial analysis and data science in a variety of fronts. There's thousands of tools now that are here, but integrating this with big data, I'm talking here about huge cloud-based analytics, and making it available to mere mortals to be able to access that big data, and then integrate it with machine learning and AI so that we can exploit that and make it available to our users, and is one of our big efforts underway, and modeling and scripting and so on. Geography used to be, I would digitize a map. GIS used to be, I'd digitize a map, put it in my database, and then use it. But increasingly, with IoT and real-time measurement being made available through the internet, I can simply connect those stationary or moving things into my GIS and start using it in real time. So it's not a matter of a static GIS anymore, or a static city. It's really a dynamic city. And I'm excited about that, because we're living in a digital age. And this digital footprint, the digital infrastructure, will wire up virtually everything that moves and changes. And that means increasingly geodesign will be applied to the real-time setting, not just make a plan for the year 2020 or something like that. No, it's going to be being able to understand how to analyze and make design decisions in near real time, much like your brain does. This is going to be fascinating to build applications to support it. Field operations are another area of our development activity, and we have many different apps as well as open APIs where you can build your own apps for collecting data from the field, feature data or tabular data, and also tracking people where they're at in the field. This is becoming increasingly important, and also helping managers take advantage of their field people. And whether this is crowdsourcing with thousands of citizens that want to capture data and seeing it happen in real time, or whether it's very structured in terms of doing field surveys and then directly capturing the data and putting it right into maps that I can use with designers. These are, or during construction or doing engineering, these are very powerful tools. I've talked about some of our research efforts. I'll conclude by just a couple comments about our products. Actually, ArcGIS is one product, but we break it out into different implementations. One of the desktop, it's called ArcGIS Pro. One of it is solutions that work with our desktop. One of them is enterprise. This is really large server technology that can be implemented both on your own computers or in the cloud. And the last one is our SaaS product, software as a service, that's called ArcGIS Online. And then it's open for developers. And we have many, many hundreds of applications that have been built and made available as open source so that our users can take them and extend them and build creative applications. Maybe that's too much technology for some of you, and I apologize about it, but I just want you to know that we keep working this massive system, advancing it as new kinds of technologies come along in measurement or in computing or in science. and then we make those available to our users. The world of geodesign can leverage much of this powerful geographic knowledge. And whether that's in online, that is build apps with SaaS so that we can take advantage of the collective body of knowledge, or whether it's in standalone systems. Let me simply say that this online environment is one of our most successful technology worlds. We have now, like I said, 10 million users, and it's growing like 400% usage in the last year. So it's not like Facebook, but in a way, it's kind of like a place to share geographic information, a massive living atlas library. And so I invite all of you, you'll see some demonstrations of it later in the session. Also, the app builders are really very powerful because it means that we can quickly build apps out of the basic stack by taking some widgets and dragging them and build a new application that can be consumer facing or engineering facing or planning facing. Some of them are web apps, some of them are mobile apps, and some of them are just pervasive sorts of things that I want to put into another application. I want to put geography into my app. So sometimes I say maps for your apps. It's a way to kind of quickly get the idea across. In the last few years, we've been building something called Arcgis Hub. And this is for our enterprise customers. They're building big, massive systems for their city or sometimes small cities. And then they're connecting that system to citizens so that they can provide not only open data, but they can organize citizenry to do things like volunteer work or do crowdsourcing for data measurement. And this really enriches GIS quite a bit. They can organize communities through social media of various types. We'll see some of this demonstrated later. Finally, I'll conclude by mentioning that Esri is engineering a number of Geoenabled systems, and these are quite specialized for unique communities, but a couple of them are designed exactly for the geodesign community. So I'll start with the ones that are not indoors. So one of the fastest growing areas of GIS is actually taking the concepts of GIS and bringing them indoors, like for buildings, for navigating buildings, or for, well, I'll get to that more in a moment. Another one is to do community or business analysis. But the ones particularly for your community, for you, are the urban planning and urban design community with City Engine and a technology we know as Urban. And then there's the community of natural resource planners, landscape planners, and a technology there is called Geoplanner. All of these are not really GIS, but they're designed for communities who don't want to have to know all about GIS, but from a technology perspective, but enjoy its usage. I'll start with Geoplanner. This is actually my own personal background. I was a landscape planner by academic training and then practiced it for many years using tools that were sort of very crude relative to this, but the concepts remain the same. Being able to overlay maps, do modeling, interpretation, and then do sketching to be able to develop plans. There'll be sessions on Geoplanner here during this session, but it's really how do we leverage landscape information to be able to make better landscape plans. This year, under President Biden's leadership, there'll be a lot of money spent, a lot of effort spent on 30/30, what's called protecting 30% of the country, or ultimately planet, by 2030. This means landscape planning. What are the areas that should go into reserves or into conservation? And this is a powerful tool to do it. The second one is the corollary, but for urban settings. This is a system for planning and managing urban information and development. And it's designed for supporting the designer and allowing them to come up with alternative scenarios and then quickly evaluate the consequences of those scenarios based on the same GIS models. And again, we'll see some demonstrations of this later in the session. City Engine has been an amazing technology for developing procedural information generation to build like 3D cities and then do interesting analytics on it. It's a part of the urban system, and it allows us to apply standardized workflows to model and quickly evaluate the impacts of different settings in cities. I mentioned indoors. This is a geodesign, a geo-enabled system, especially for people who manage buildings or manage campuses. And it supports activities all the way from wayfinding to field data collection. And it operates indoors as well as outdoors, like the little green dot can go indoors in the city, into the building, know where you're at, and know where other people are at. So very, very helpful tools there, bringing the concepts of GIS and geodesign right into the building. Well, I've talked quite a bit about what Esri's up to, and I was asked to sort of give you some kind of a profile of what I thought was coming next. Look, GIS has been very useful for decades in helping us design and plan settings, cities, landscapes, and so on. But this process keeps evolving. With geospatial infrastructure, it means I can look at processes of geodesign collaboration and look at whole communities in real time. This is all about integrating and bringing together information. It's about understanding complexity, this idea of modeling and understanding processes and so forth. It's about being able to look at the holistic solutions, and also improve collaboration, not just with communities, but also between designers or between clients and government and so on. And I think I have great hope that this will be one of those things that is accelerates being able to change in a positive way our future. GIS is in my lifetime has been evolving constantly. It never changes. Every year I would talk to our users and my colleagues that it's becoming better. But this last couple of years has been especially getting better because it has meant that we're interconnecting all the little systems into an infrastructure. And it's that infrastructure that I think designers of all type have to become increasingly aware. It's like becoming aware of the web, or becoming aware of, the air. It's going to be available for people to better, as individuals or organizations, develop better plans and work better together. This platform, this infrastructure, this new kind of urban infrastructure or global infrastructure is going to become a powerful force. It's going to help us have geographic consciousness and geographic knowledge everywhere. I'm excited about that. Nevertheless, really, we need to do more. And that's in many ways what this conference is about. It's not just, okay, we're adding more information, it's in an kind of infrastructure. But our global challenges keep accelerating, and we need as a community, particularly, I'm just going to speak to you, we need to develop geodesign as a kind of profession, because my strong belief system is it is going to be essential to build a sustainable future. It'll transform our organizations, it'll transform cities, it'll transform the human footprint on our world. And I think it'll be essential for our world if we're going to address the big challenges and the sort of, so I'm not a person who's going to be overwhelmed by doom and gloom. Looking at all the forecasts, one can easily do that. That's not me. What I'm about is trying to really kick it and keep pushing the technology and these methods of geodesign that bring it all together to be able to create a better world. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to this conference. I deeply appreciate it, and I think you will get a lot out of it, and I'll see you. Thank you very much.